I'm Amber Harrison, 32, and today I'm cutting the ribbon on Phoenix Metalcraft's grand opening. Just 18 months ago, my world collapsed when I discovered my parents had secretly transferred Harrison Metalworks, the family business I'd poured my life into, to my sister's husband Bradley. The shop my grandfather built, where I'd spent every weekend since childhood, where I'd innovated designs that doubled our profits, was handed to someone who couldn't even weld a straight line. That day broke my heart, but it didn't break me. Before I tell you my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our community of resilient fighters who refuse to give up when life knocks them down. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Harrison Metalworks wasn't just a business, it was our family's legacy. My grandfather, Jeffrey Harrison, started it in 1965 with nothing but a welding torch, determination, and raw talent for metalwork. He built it from a tiny garage operation into one of the most respected custom metal fabrication shops in our state. The shop specialized in architectural metalwork, creating everything from ornate railings to structural steel components, and eventually expanded into artistic metal sculptures that adorned public spaces across the city. Growing up, that shop was my second home. While other kids played video games or hung out at the mall, I was learning to weld at age 12. My father, Derek, would set me up with small projects, gradually increasing their complexity as my skills developed. I can still smell the distinct mix of metal and machine oil that permeated the air, and feel the weight of my first welding helmet, adult-sized and heavy on my small shoulders. "You've got the Harrison hands," my father would say proudly as he examined my clean welds. "Just like your grandfather." My sister Heather, 2 years older, occasionally joined us but never showed the same interest or aptitude. Where I saw possibilities in raw metal, she saw dirty, noisy work. She preferred helping our mother with the office administration when forced to participate in the family business. I didn't mind it meant more time for me at the torch. After high school, I pursued a mechanical engineering degree, taking classes during the week while still working weekends at the shop. College exposed me to new fabrication technologies and design software that I knew could revolutionize our family business. Meanwhile, Heather studied marketing and met Bradley Taylor, a business major with an MBA and zero experience in metalworking. "The shop will be yours someday," Dad promised repeatedly throughout my college years. "You're the one with the skill and passion to take Harrison Metalworks into the future." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I'd already proven my commitment and ability. During my final year of college, I convinced Dad to invest in our first CNC machine, allowing us to create precision cuts that would have taken days by hand. The investment paid for itself within 6 months. After graduation, I joined the business full-time and spearheaded a modernization effort. I designed a digital inventory system, created a portfolio of standardized components that could be customized for clients, and developed new finishing techniques that set our work apart from competitors. Within 2 years of my full-time involvement, our profits increased by 40%. Mom never quite saw my value the way Dad did. Despite my contributions, she always seemed to favor Heather. "Business isn't just about making things," she'd say. "It's about relationships and management." When Heather and Bradley got married, Mom immediately started talking about how business-savvy Bradley was, despite his complete lack of industry knowledge. "He has such great ideas for expanding the company," Mom would gush, while I silently fumed. His great ideas were usually things I'd already suggested months earlier. Meanwhile, I was building my own reputation in the metalworking community. My architectural railing designs won awards at trade shows, and I began receiving personal requests from high-end clients. I created a distinctive aesthetic that blended industrial strength with organic flowing forms that became associated with the Harrison name. On my 30th birthday, Dad took me to dinner at my favorite steakhouse. Over medium-rare ribeyes, he became uncharacteristically sentimental. "2 more years," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "Then I'm retiring, and Harrison Metalworks becomes yours to lead. You've earned it, Amber. I couldn't be prouder of what you've built." I slept better that night than I had in years, secure in the knowledge that my dedication had been recognized and my future was set. The legacy would continue through me, and I had so many plans for where to take the business next. I had no idea that within months, everything would change. The morning started like any other. I arrived at the shop at 6:30 a.m., an hour before the crew, to review project timelines and prepare the day's work assignments. As I approached the office, I noticed unusual voices. My parents, Heather, and Bradley were all there, huddled around the conference table. They rarely came in this early, especially not all together. I paused outside the door, coffee in hand, when Bradley's voice carried through the gap. Once the transfer is complete, we'll restructure the production floor to maximize efficiency, he was saying. Some of the older employees might resist the changes, but they'll adapt. Or we need to be sensitive about transitions, my mother interjected. After all, some of these people have worked with us for decades. And what about Amber? Heather asked, her voice lower. She thinks she's taking over in 2 years. There was a heavy silence before my father spoke. We'll tell her after everything's finalized. She's emotional. It's better this way. My heart started pounding as I pushed the door open. 4 heads snapped toward me, expressions ranging from shock to guilt. On the table between them lay papers with the unmistakable Harrison Metal Works logo and the word transfer in bold letters. What's going on? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Amber, you're early, Mom said, attempting to slide the papers into a folder. Don't. I stepped forward and placed my hand on the documents. What are these? Dad cleared his throat. We were going to discuss this with you next week. We've been considering the future of the company, and after careful thought, we're transferring ownership to Heather and Bradley, my mother interrupted, apparently deciding directness was now the best approach. The paperwork will be finalized next month. The room tilted slightly. You promised me the business, I said to my father, my voice barely above a whisper. 2 years, you said, at my birthday dinner. Plans change, honey, Mom said. We need to think about what's best for the family business long term. And I'm not family? Tears burned in my eyes. Of course you are, Dad said, looking uncomfortable. But Heather and Bradley are married. They're settled. The business should stay in the family. The implication was clear. As a single woman, I might marry and change my name, or move away, or prioritize a future husband's career. Despite my lifelong dedication, they saw me as a flight risk. Bradley has a business degree, Dad continued, not meeting my eyes. He understands the financial and management aspects that I what? I demanded. That I've been successfully handling for years while increasing our profits? While winning industry awards? While bringing in clients who specifically request my designs? Don't be dramatic, my mother sighed. No one is saying you haven't contributed. Bradley, who had been watching the exchange with poorly concealed smugness, finally spoke. We value your technical expertise, Amber. In fact, I'd like you to stay on as head of design. We can modernize operations while you focus on what you do best, the creative side. The condescension in his tone made my skin crawl. He wanted me to stay and create while he took credit for my work and made all the decisions. Heather reached for my hand. This is for the best, sis. You're amazing at metalwork, but you hate the paperwork and management stuff. Now you can just focus on the part you love. I yanked my hand away. Don't pretend this is for my benefit. You've never cared about this business. You don't even know what we do. That's enough, Dad said sharply. The decision is made. I looked at each of their faces, my father's avoidance, my mother's dismissal, Heather's fake sympathy, and Bradley's triumph. In that moment, something inside me broke and reformed into something harder. Then I quit, I said quietly. Don't be hasty, Dad started. I quit, I shouted, my voice echoing through the shop. 18 years I've given to this place. Nights, weekends, holidays. I turned down job offers from major engineering firms to stay here. And this is how you repay loyalty? By handing my future to someone who couldn't weld if his life depended on it? I stormed to my office, grabbed a box, and began emptying my desk. Framed certificates, design notebooks, personal tools, they all went in. By now, early employees had arrived and were watching uncertainly from a distance. Ryan Mitchell, our shop foreman who'd worked for Harrison Metalworks since I was a child, stood in my doorway. Is it true? He asked quietly. Apparently, having an MBA is more important than knowing metal, I replied, not looking up as I continued packing. Ryan shook his head. This place won't be the same without you. I finally looked up, tears streaming down my face. I gave everything to this shop, Ryan. I know, he said, then glanced over his shoulder before lowering his voice. Keep in touch. I'll let you know what happens here. I nodded, grateful for the small alliance. With a final look around the office where I'd designed my best work, I walked out past my silent parents, ignoring my sister's call to be reasonable. Bradley was already on the phone, probably sharing the good news with his business school buddies. As I loaded my box into my car, I realized I was leaving without a plan for the first time in my life. Everything I'd worked toward had just evaporated. The weight of uncertainty pressed on my chest as I drove away from Harrison Metalworks, the only future I'd ever imagined. The following weeks passed in a haze of Netflix marathons, unanswered phone calls, and delivery pizza. I barely left my apartment except to collect more boxes of tissues and bottles of wine. My normally organized space devolved into a nest of blankets and takeout containers. Each morning, I woke up forgetting what had happened, experiencing a moment of normalcy before reality crashed back. Then came the questions that circled my mind like vultures. What was I supposed to do now? Who was I without the shop? Had the last decade of my life been completely wasted? My savings account, once a point of pride, now represented a ticking clock. Each bill payment reduced the buffer between me and financial disaster. The engineering firms that had once recruited me had filled their positions years ago, and my specialized experience in custom metalwork didn't translate neatly to a resume bullet point. On day 17 of my self-imposed exile, my phone lit up with Heather's name. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won out. Amber, are you okay? No one's heard from you in weeks. Her voice carried practiced concern. I'm fine, I replied flatly. Look, we all miss you at the shop. Bradley's making some changes, really exciting stuff. He's implementing that inventory system you were always talking about. My inventory system. The one I'd already designed and was preparing to install before they pushed me out. That's nice, I managed. You should come visit. Everyone asks about you. Though, there have been some rumors. She paused dramatically. Some clients were wondering if you had some sort of breakdown. Mom might have mentioned something about you being in a fragile state. The realization hit like a physical blow. They were systematically undermining my professional reputation. If I tried to find work in the industry, potential employers would hear I was unstable or emotional. After ending the call with vague promises to catch up soon, I hurled my phone across the room. It bounced off the couch as tears of frustration burned my eyes. That evening, restlessness drove me to my small balcony, where I kept a modest workbench and basic tools. Nothing like the professional equipment I was accustomed to, but enough for small projects. Almost unconsciously, I began working a piece of scrap metal, feeling the familiar resistance as I bent and shaped it. Hours later, I had created a small phoenix rising from flames. The irony wasn't lost on me. But something had shifted. For the first time since leaving Harrison Metalworks, I felt like myself again. The next morning, my college friend Sophia Chen called. Unlike other friends who'd given up after my repeated silence, Sophia was persistent. Enough wallowing, she announced when I finally answered. I'm coming over with real food, and you're going to tell me what's happening. Sophia had been my roommate in engineering school before switching to business finance. Now, she worked for a venture capital firm specializing in manufacturing startups. Her no-nonsense attitude was exactly what I needed. She listened without interruption as I explained everything, occasionally taking notes. When I finished, she pushed her plate aside and fixed me with a determined look. Start your own metal shop, she said simply. I laughed bitterly. With what? I need hundreds of thousands for equipment alone, not to mention space, materials, permits, so get funding. Write a business plan. You have a reputation in this industry independent of your family's business. Use it. You don't understand. They're already spreading rumors about me. Then prove them wrong, Sophia interrupted. Look, your family betrayed you. That sucks. But giving up means they win twice. I started to protest again when my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Bradley fired Jim and Carlos today. Says their methods are outdated. Replace them with his college buddy who can't tell MIG from TIG welding. Also taking credit for your CNC innovations at client meetings. Says they were his idea all along. Jim had worked for my grandfather. Carlos was our most skilled fabricator. Both had families that depended on their income. Something hardened inside me. This wasn't just about me anymore. Bradley wasn't just stealing my future. He was dismantling everything that made Harrison Metalworks special. I can't compete with an established business, I said weakly. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Based on what Ryan's telling you, there might not be much of a business left to compete with soon. She pulled out her laptop. Let's start with the numbers. How much would you need to set up a basic operation? For the first time since the betrayal, I felt a spark of possibility. Maybe, just maybe, I could build something new from the ashes of what I'd lost. Once the decision was made, I approached it like any engineering problem, methodically breaking it down into solvable components. First, I needed to understand exactly what starting a metal fabrication business would require financially. I created spreadsheets detailing everything from major equipment costs to the price of welding gloves. The numbers were sobering. Even a modest operation would require substantial capital. Small business administration loans could cover part of it, but I'd need additional investors. Sophia and I worked evenings and weekends, refining a comprehensive business plan. She introduced financial projections and market analysis that transformed my technical knowledge into language investors would understand. We identified a niche that Harrison Metalworks had neglected: high-end, residential, architectural metal features that would allow me to establish my own identity while leveraging my existing skills. You need a partner with business expertise, Sophia said one night as we reviewed our draft. Someone who complements your technical knowledge. Know anyone? I asked absently, focused on equipment specifications. She smiled. Me. I want in. 15% equity for my investment and ongoing business management. I looked up, startled. You're serious? Completely. This is a solid business opportunity, and I'm tired of helping other people build their dreams. Let's build ours. With Sophia officially on board, our search for industrial space began in earnest. We needed high ceilings, reinforced floors, proper ventilation, and affordable rent, a challenging combination. After viewing several unsuitable properties, we found a promising warehouse on the outskirts of town. The landlord seemed ready to proceed until he mysteriously backtracked, claiming the space was no longer available. The same thing happened with the next property. After the third rejection, I received a call from the real estate agent. I shouldn't tell you this, she said quietly, but someone's been calling landlords after you view properties. A man claiming to represent Harrison Metalworks, warning them you're a liability. Bradley. Of course. That evening, while drowning my frustrations in a glass of wine at a local restaurant, I ran into Jason Gardner, one of my regular clients from Harrison Metalworks. He owned a successful chain of boutique hotels known for their distinctive design elements. Amber Harrison, where have you been hiding? I tried commissioning a new piece through your family's shop, but they said you were no longer involved. The design they proposed was, he paused diplomatically, not up to your standards. I explained my situation, trying to maintain professionalism despite my anger. Jason listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. So, you're starting your own shop? Excellent. I've been looking for someone who can create custom metal features for our newest property. He pulled out a business card. Call me when you're operational, and if you need investors, I might know some people. Jason's interest evolved into a formal investment offer, contingent on seeing our business plan and workspace. With his contribution alongside Sophia's and my savings, we finally had enough capital to move forward. After weeks of searching, we found our location a rundown warehouse that had been vacant for years. The rent was low precisely because it needed significant work, but the bones were good and the industrial zoning was perfect for our needs. The day after signing the lease, I received a call from a blocked number. You're making a mistake, Bradley's voice came through without greeting. You can't compete with us. We have the Harrison name, the established clients, the equipment, and yet you feel threatened enough to call me, I replied calmly. I'm trying to save you from embarrassment. This little tantrum of yours, goodbye, Bradley. I hung up, hands shaking, but resolve strengthened. That same day, Ryan called to tell me he'd been given an ultimatum at Harrison Metalworks: either adapt to Bradley's new methods or leave. 2 other skilled workers had already quit after similar conversations. We're wondering what you're up to, he said carefully. The next morning, Ryan and former colleagues Carlos and Jim were standing outside our empty warehouse, tools in hand, ready to help build something new. "We believe in you," Ryan said simply, "and we need jobs." Together, we designed the layout for what would become Phoenix Metalcraft, a name I chose deliberately for its symbolism of resurrection and transformation. Our logo featured a stylized bird rising from flames, wings formed from flowing metal ribbons. Looking around at my small but dedicated team, I felt the first real hope since the day my family betrayed me. We were starting with almost nothing, but we had something Bradley could never buy: passion and expertise. Transforming our dilapidated warehouse into a functioning metal fabrication shop became a round-the-clock mission. The space needed everything: electrical upgrades for our equipment, reinforced flooring in production areas, proper ventilation systems for welding stations, and partition walls to separate the fabrication floor from the design office. We tackled the work ourselves to save money, becoming amateur electricians, plumbers, and carpenters in the process. I fell into bed each night with aching muscles and paint-speckled hair. But for the first time in months, I slept soundly, the exhaustion of physical labor quieting the anxious thoughts that had plagued me. Equipment acquisition became a treasure hunt across 3 states. We scoured online auctions, equipment liquidations, and even bankruptcy sales, piecing together our workshop one machine at a time. The centerpiece was a used CNC plasma cutter, not as advanced as the one I'd selected for Harrison Metal Works, but serviceable with some modifications that Ryan and I engineered. "It's not pretty, but it cuts true," Ryan said after we completed a test run, the machine precisely carving our Phoenix logo into a sheet of steel. While we worked on the physical space, Sophia navigated the bureaucratic maze of business licenses, permits, insurance, and tax registrations. Each evening, she tutored me on business basics, accounting principles, contract negotiations, employment regulations, topics I'd never needed to master at the family business. "You're a quick study," she remarked one night as we reviewed profit margin calculations. "Most creative types hate this stuff." "I'm motivated," I replied, thinking of Bradley's smug face. 3 weeks into our renovation, my parents made an unexpected appearance at the warehouse. Dad looked uncomfortable, hands shoved in pockets, while Mom carried a basket that presumably contained some peace offering. "We wanted to see how you're doing," Mom said, eyes widening as she took in the half-finished space. "Bradley mentioned you were setting up shop." Of course he knew. He probably had someone watching our progress. "Just checking if you need anything," Dad added awkwardly. "I could help with some of the electrical work." The offer tempted me. We were struggling with the 3-phase power installation, but Ryan's warning look reminded me to be cautious. "We're managing fine," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Did you need something?" "Can't we just visit our daughter?" Mom asked, placing her basket on a workbench. "We're still family, Amber." While they wandered around, asking pointed questions about our equipment and examining our design prototypes, I noticed Mom taking photos with her phone. Not selfies or family pictures, documentation of our setup and the machinery we'd acquired. After they left, Ryan confirmed my suspicions. They were scouting us. Bradley's probably worried about competition. The confirmation hurt more than I expected. Even now, my parents were choosing sides, and it wasn't mine. The following week, our permit applications mysteriously stalled. The building inspector, who had initially been helpful, became evasive, mentioning concerns raised by established businesses in the area. Jason's contacts in the city administration eventually helped us navigate the blockade, but the delay cost us precious time and additional fees for expedited processing. Our first major setback came when the used welding power supplies we'd purchased failed during installation, sending cascades of sparks across the workshop floor. No one was injured, but the equipment was unsalvageable, and the replacement cost hadn't been budgeted. "We could delay opening," Sophia suggested as we reviewed our dwindling funds. "Not an option," I insisted. "We have client commitments." That night, I received an unexpected visitor, my grandfather, Jeffrey, now 81, but still straight-backed and sharp-eyed. "Thought I should see what my granddaughter is building," he said, inspecting our workspace with a craftsman's attention to detail. "Your father told me you were being stubborn. Now I see you're being a Harrison." His approval meant everything. Before leaving, he pulled me aside. "Check your bank account tomorrow. And look in my truck, got some old tools gathering dust in my garage. Might as well be used by someone who appreciates them." The old tools included precision instruments that would have cost thousands new, and the bank deposit was enough to replace the welding equipment with higher quality models than we'd originally purchased. "Don't tell your father," was his only condition. He's made his choice. With renewed determination and resources, we pushed forward through 14-hour days and occasional all-nighters to meet our timeline. I learned to function on minimal sleep, catching naps on the office couch between fabrication sessions and client meetings. Just as we were preparing to fulfill orders for our first clients, small residential projects secured through my previous connections, we discovered another obstacle. Several potential customers called to cancel their orders, all citing the same reason. They'd been contacted by Harrison Metalworks with substantially lower quotes for the same work. "They're selling at a loss just to block us," Sophia realized after comparing the numbers. "They can't sustain those prices." "Neither can we," I pointed out. "No, but we don't need to match them. We need to differentiate ourselves." That insight sparked a pivot in our strategy. Instead of competing directly on price, we would emphasize our design capabilities and craftsmanship. Each Phoenix Metalcraft piece would include custom elements and signature details that mass production couldn't match. The strategy required more labor hours per project, but resulted in pieces that showcased our abilities and justified premium pricing. Slowly, we began building a portfolio that highlighted the difference between our work and what Harrison Metalworks was producing under Bradley's cost-cutting leadership. 6 weeks after beginning renovations, Phoenix Metalcraft produced its first completed commission, an architectural railing for a local restaurant's mezzanine. The elegant design incorporated flowing metal ribbons that caught light and created shadow patterns, transforming a functional element into a feature piece. When the restaurant owner posted photos on social media, tagging our new business account, we received 3 inquiries for similar work within days. It wasn't financial security yet, but it was validation that we were on the right path. Standing in our workshop, watching my small team fine-tuning the next project, I felt a surge of pride that eclipsed the lingering pain of betrayal. We had created something from nothing, against active opposition. Whatever happened next, we had already accomplished what Bradley thought impossible. 6 months after our grand opening, Phoenix Metalcraft was establishing itself as a boutique fabrication shop, known for distinctive designs and impeccable craftsmanship. We weren't directly competing with Harrison Metalworks in terms of volume. Our team was still small and our capacity limited, but we were carving out a niche in high-end residential and commercial projects where design value outweighed mass production efficiency. Our reputation grew primarily through word of mouth and social media. Each installation became a marketing opportunity, with clients eager to show off their custom metal features. Our portfolio expanded to include sculptural staircases, artistic room dividers, and statement lighting fixtures alongside more traditional railings and architectural elements. Bradley's response to our modest success was disproportionately aggressive. Harrison Metalworks suddenly began offering artistic custom designs at prices that barely covered material costs. When reviewing these designs, however, industry insiders recognized pale imitations of my aesthetic, without the technical understanding that made my work functional as well as beautiful. "They're underbidding us by 40% on the Westlake project," Ryan reported after speaking with a contractor friend. "But they're using thinner gauge metal than the design requires. It won't pass inspection if they build it as quoted." More concerning were the calls from suppliers, informing us of misunderstandings about our credit terms. One after another, our accounts were flagged for prepayment requirements that weren't applied to other businesses our size. "Someone's been calling them," Sophia confirmed after investigating, suggesting we're a credit risk. The financial strain of prepaying for materials while waiting for client payments created cash flow challenges that kept me awake at night. We were producing quality work and generating revenue, but our growth was constrained by these artificial barriers. Meanwhile, my parents embarked on a campaign of family concern, reaching out to mutual friends and distant relatives to express worry about my competitive behavior and how it was damaging family harmony. These conversations invariably circled back to me through well-meaning connections. "Your mother says they've invited you to dinner several times," my aunt reported during a chance meeting at the grocery store. "She's heartbroken that you're choosing business over family." The revision of history was infuriating. In their narrative, I was the unreasonable one who couldn't accept change, not the daughter whose birthright had been stolen. The tension culminated at the annual Metalworking Industry Association dinner, where both Harrison Metalworks and Phoenix Metalcraft had submitted entries to the design showcase. I arrived with Sophia and Ryan, nervous but proud of our submission, a freestanding sculptural screen that demonstrated complex joining techniques and material contrasts. Bradley and Heather were already holding court near the Harrison Metalworks display, which featured a large architectural element suspiciously similar to a design I'd sketched but never produced while working there. Amber Bradley greeted me with artificial warmth when we inevitably crossed paths. "Brave of you to submit work so early in your venture. The industry appreciates enthusiasm from newcomers." The condescension in his tone made it clear he was playing to the audience of potential clients around us. Before I could respond, he continued loudly, "I was just explaining to these gentlemen how we've had to correct some quality issues with projects you started before leaving the family business. No hard feelings, everyone makes mistakes when they're learning." The public humiliation attempt was calculated to damage my professional reputation and provoke an emotional response that would reinforce his narrative about my instability. Instead, I smiled. How interesting. I'd love to see examples of these corrections sometime. In the meantime, I'd be happy to explain the engineering principles behind our showcase piece to anyone interested in the structural innovations we've developed. I turned to the gathering of industry figures, maintaining composure while Bradley seethed. For the next 30 minutes, I conducted an impromptu technical explanation of our design process, answering questions and establishing my expertise without once mentioning Harrison Metalworks. The chairman of Renton Architecture Group, who had worked with my grandfather decades earlier, pulled me aside afterward. "That was well handled," he said, "and impressive work, especially with your limited resources. We're planning a significant project for next quarter, a statement staircase for our new headquarters. I'd like Phoenix Metalcraft to bid on it. Securing the Renton contract would be a game changer, a prestigious project that would showcase our capabilities and provide financial stability for months." When the formal request for proposals arrived the following week, our entire team worked around the clock developing a comprehensive bid that highlighted our unique approach. The morning we submitted our proposal, I received a text from Ryan's contact at Harrison Metalworks. Bradley had been certain the Renton contract was theirs, having played golf with board members and offered substantial discounts. When news reached him that Phoenix Metalcraft was also bidding, he reportedly threw a 3-ring binder across the office. 2 weeks later, Renton Architecture Group announced their decision. Phoenix Metalcraft would create their signature staircase. The news should have been purely celebratory, but Bradley's reaction was swift and vicious. 3 days after the announcement, I arrived at our workshop to find firefighters containing a small blaze that had started near our material storage area. While officially deemed accidental, the fire marshal noted that the ignition point was suspiciously located and the timing overnight when no one was present but security systems were temporarily disabled for maintenance was convenient. The damage was targeted rather than extensive, destroying some of our specialty materials and a custom jig we'd built for the Renton project. Insurance would eventually cover the losses, but the immediate impact was significant production delays. As we surveyed the damage, calculating how to recover our timeline, I found myself questioning whether continuing was worth the constant battle. The fire had come dangerously close to destroying everything we'd built, and Bradley's willingness to escalate was concerning. "Maybe we should cut our losses," I suggested to Sophia that evening, as we updated our financial projections to account for the setback. "Find buyers for the equipment, pay off our investors, walk away. Is that what you want?" she asked simply. "No," I admitted after a long pause. "But I'm tired of fighting." "Then don't fight. Build something so good they can't ignore it." Her words sparked an idea. During the cleanup, I'd been experimenting with a new technique for joining dissimilar metals that created both structural integrity and visual interest. The process was difficult to replicate without specific knowledge and tools, something Bradley couldn't easily copy, even if he saw the finished product. What if we completely change our approach for the Renton project? I proposed, sketching rapidly as inspiration flowed. Instead of the expected industrial aesthetic, we create something that looks impossibly delicate but meets all structural requirements. The team gathered around as the concept developed a floating staircase with treads that seemed to be suspended by metal ribbons, incorporating our new joining technique throughout. It would require precision that mass production methods couldn't achieve and would showcase craftsmanship in a way that would distinguish our work immediately. As we reimagined the project, energized by the creative challenge, I realized Sophia was right. The best revenge wouldn't be winning individual battles against Bradley's sabotage. It would be building something extraordinary that he could never take away. The cease and desist letter arrived on Phoenix Metalcraft's 8-month anniversary. Official letterhead from Harrison Metalworks' attorney demanded we immediately discontinue use of proprietary techniques and designs allegedly developed while I was their employee. "This is ridiculous," Sophia said as we reviewed the document with our lawyer, Martin Geller. "Amber created these techniques. Unfortunately, without a formal agreement specifying your ownership of intellectual property developed during your employment, they have a potential claim," Martin explained, "especially since you didn't have a non-compete agreement. So they can just take everything I created?" The injustice made my voice shake. "Not necessarily, but fighting this will be expensive. Very expensive." The lawsuit's timing wasn't accidental. We were midway through the Renton project, which had already been delayed by the fire damage. Our cash reserves were committed to materials and payroll. Legal fees would push us beyond our financial breaking point. "They're trying to bankrupt us with legal costs," Sophia realized. Martin nodded. "It's a common strategy. They've requested an injunction to prevent you from completing current projects while the case proceeds. Even if you eventually win, the immediate business disruption could be fatal for a new company." "What are our options?" I asked. "We could agree to some licensing arrangement or design modifications. Or fight, which means significant legal expenses and potential business interruption." Neither option felt acceptable. Settling would legitimize Bradley's false claims and restrict our future designs. Fighting might be financially impossible. As we grappled with this dilemma, troubling news emerged about Harrison Metalworks. Longtime clients were reporting quality issues, missed deadlines, and communication problems. The company that had once been known for reliability was developing a reputation for overpromising and under-delivering. Ryan's contacts reported that Bradley had cut corners on materials to maintain profit margins while underbidding competitors. Several installations had failed inspections, requiring expensive corrections. Rather than addressing these fundamental issues, Bradley blamed the problems on sabotage by former employees, meaning me and my team. "He's destroying my family's legacy," I told Sophia after hearing about a structural failure in a Harrison installation that had fortunately been caught before causing injury. "Everything my grandfather and father built over decades, Bradley's dismantling it for short-term profits." "Is that our problem?" she asked pragmatically. "We have our own business to save." It shouldn't have been my problem, but it felt personal. The shop hadn't just been my workplace, it had been part of my identity. Watching Bradley run it into the ground while simultaneously trying to destroy my new venture awakened a protective instinct I couldn't ignore. While strategizing our legal response, I received an unexpected package delivered anonymously to our workshop. Inside was a USB drive containing spreadsheets, emails, and financial reports from Harrison Metalworks' internal systems. The documents revealed a pattern of financial mismanagement and potential fraud, including billing clients for premium materials while substituting lower-grade alternatives, falsifying timesheets to overcharge on hourly work, diverting company funds to personal expenses coded as business development, securing loans using company assets as collateral without proper authorization. Most damning was evidence that Bradley had been systematically embezzling from Harrison Metalworks, siphoning money into a personal account while reporting artificial expenses to my parents. The package also contained a brief note. "Not everyone at HMW supports what's happening. This might help. The information represented a potential nuclear option. With these documents, I could not only defeat the lawsuit but potentially trigger criminal investigations. Bradley would be ruined, and Harrison Metal Works might not survive the scandal. Sophia saw it as an obvious choice. This is exactly what we need. We can use this to force them to drop the lawsuit and back off. But something felt wrong about winning this way. Using the documents meant becoming the person Bradley accused me of being someone willing to destroy others for personal gain. It would validate the family narrative that I was vindictive and unstable. After days of internal struggle, I made a decision that Sophia initially thought was madness. "We're not using these," I told her, "securing the USB drive in our safe. We'll find another way. They're trying to put us out of business, Amber. This isn't the time for moral high ground. If we win by becoming like Bradley, we've already lost something more important. Instead of leveraging the damning evidence, we focused on developing a counter-strategy." Martin identified weaknesses in Harrison's legal claims and prepared robust documentation of my independent development of the techniques in question. Meanwhile, we accelerated work on the city's most visible contract, a major public sculpture installation that both companies had bid on. The sculpture commission had been awarded through blind selection, with the committee evaluating designs without knowing which company submitted them. Phoenix Metalcraft's proposal featured flowing metal forms that created different impressions from various viewing angles, incorporating our innovative joining techniques throughout. Harrison Metalworks had submitted a more conventional design that, while technically competent, lacked distinctive character. Bradley, believing his bid was superior, had publicly criticized the selection process when we won the commission. Now, with legal threats looming, completing this high-profile project before any injunction could be implemented became our primary focus. Our entire team worked day and night shifts, sleeping on cots in the office and eating meals between welding sessions. "They can sue us afterward," I told the team, "but they can't undo a completed installation that the public loves." The installation date approached with both legal and fabrication pressures mounting. We were racing against time, completing complex components while our lawyer fought to delay court proceedings. Bradley, realizing our strategy, pushed for an emergency hearing to secure an immediate injunction. Everything converged on a single week. Our installation was scheduled for Monday, while the emergency hearing was set for Wednesday. If we could complete the project before the hearing, we would create both public support and a fait accompli that even a favorable legal ruling couldn't undo for Harrison Metalworks. Bradley, desperate to prevent this outcome, rushed Harrison Metalworks' competing proposal for the sculpture installation, attempting to complete it ahead of schedule for a surprise unveiling that would overshadow our work. Both companies prepared for a public presentation where the city would view the competing designs side by side before the final installation. The event became a de facto referendum on our dispute, with local media covering the metal shop rivalry as a human interest story. Standing beside our completed sculpture in the exhibition space, watching visitors respond to its shifting perspectives and delicate strength, I felt a calm certainty regardless of legal outcomes. We had created something honest and beautiful. Whether Phoenix Metalcraft survived or not, this work would remain as testimony to what we believed in. The city's verdict was unanimous. Phoenix Metalcraft's sculpture would be installed as planned, with officials praising its innovative approach and dialogue with public space. Harrison Metalworks' rushed submission was described diplomatically as competent but conventional, with visible quality issues that couldn't be ignored. Local media coverage of the workshop rivalry brought unexpected attention to both businesses. A feature article in the business section outlined the dispute, inevitably framing it as a David versus Goliath narrative that garnered public sympathy for our fledgling operation. Comment sections filled with people sharing their own family business betrayal stories and pledging support. This publicity coincided with our emergency hearing, creating a public relations challenge for Harrison Metalworks. The judge, reluctant to halt a project the community had embraced, denied the immediate injunction while setting a timeline for the broader case to proceed. With this immediate threat neutralized, Phoenix Metalcraft experienced its first significant cash flow improvement. The publicity brought new client inquiries, and completing the high-profile installation ahead of schedule released final payment on our largest contract to date. For the first time, we could pay salaries without Sophia and I forgoing our own compensation. This stability allowed us to expand, hiring 2 additional fabricators who had recently left Harrison Metal Works, citing management issues. They brought valuable skills and institutional knowledge, integrating seamlessly with our existing team. "Bradley's making our recruitment easy," Ryan commented as we welcomed the new team members. "Everyone with real skills is jumping ship." One Tuesday afternoon, as I reviewed design modifications for an upcoming project, our shop doorbell rang. My father stood awkwardly in the reception area, looking older than when I'd last seen him months earlier. "Can we talk?" he asked, eyes taking in our modest but organized workspace. "Alone?" I led him to our small conference room, emotion warring with professional composure. He sat heavily, running his hand over his face before speaking. "I made a mistake, Amber. A terrible mistake." The simple admission I'd waited months to hear landed with less impact than I'd expected. "Which mistake specifically?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "All of it. Giving Bradley control. Not standing by you. Believing his promises about maintaining the Harrison legacy." He gestured vaguely. "Everything. Why now?" The timing seemed suspicious after our recent public success. "Because he's running the business into the ground." Dad's voice cracked. "Quality problems, customer complaints, cash flow issues he can't explain. The reputation your grandfather built over decades, it's disappearing." So this was about saving Harrison Metal Works, not reconciling with me. The realization stung, but I maintained my composure. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I don't see how it concerns Phoenix Metalcraft. I thought maybe you could come back. Help us fix things." The request was so unexpected I almost laughed. "Come back? After you gave away what was promised to me? After Bradley sued me? After Mom spread rumors about my mental stability? I know we hurt you. Hurt doesn't begin to cover it." Years of suppressed emotion threatened to surface. "You didn't just hurt me, Dad. You showed me exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. Below Heather, below her husband, below the precious family name that apparently only matters when attached to someone with the right chromosomes." He flinched but didn't deny it. "We thought we were doing what was best for the business." "No, you did what was easiest for you. Bradley talked a good game, and you wanted to believe him because it meant you could hand everything over and walk away with a clear conscience. Except it didn't work out that way, did it?" The silence confirmed my assessment. After several moments, Dad spoke again, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Harrison Metal Works is nearly bankrupt, Amber. Bradley's been hiding it from us, but I found the notices. We could lose everything, including the building your grandfather mortgaged his house to buy." The news should have brought satisfaction, karmic justice for their betrayal, but instead left me hollow. Despite everything, I couldn't take pleasure in the destruction of my family's legacy. "What does Heather say about all this?" I asked. Dad's expression darkened. "She and Bradley are having 2 problems. His assistant Megan has apparently been more than an assistant for some time. So Bradley was betraying my sister while destroying my family's business. The perfect son-in-law." Our conversation was interrupted by an unexpected visitor, Heather herself, eyes red-rimmed and hands trembling slightly as she entered the conference room. "I didn't know you'd be here," she said to our father before turning to me. "I needed to talk to Amber." "I'll give you 2 some privacy," Dad said, rising. "No, stay," Heather insisted. "This concerns all of us." She took a deep breath. "Bradley's been lying to everyone. About everything. The business is in trouble, serious trouble. And I just found out he's been." Her voice caught. "He's been seeing his assistant for months." The pain in her eyes was genuine. And despite our complicated history, my heart ached for her humiliation. Family loyalty ran deep, even when fractured. "I'm sorry," I offered simply. "I found documents on his computer," Heather continued. "He's been planning to sell off the equipment, even the building behind our back. He has buyers lined up for everything, including Grandpa's original tools that Dad promised would stay in the family. He can't do that without shareholder approval," Dad protested. "He's forged documents showing we agreed to the sale. The deal closes next week." The revelation stunned us all into silence. This wasn't just mismanagement or marital infidelity. It was outright fraud that would erase our family's heritage completely. Dad was already reaching for his phone. "I'll call our lawyer." "I already did," Heather interrupted. "We filed for an emergency injunction to stop the sale, but Bradley's got everything set up through shell companies. It's complicated." As they discussed legal strategies, I sat back, processing everything. Part of me wanted to maintain my distance from this family drama. Phoenix Metalcraft was growing, establishing its own identity separate from Harrison Legacy. Getting involved in their problems would inevitably complicate my fresh start. Yet something tugged at me, not obligation, but connection to the shop itself, the building where I'd first learned to weld, the machines that had responded to my touch since childhood, the legacy of craftsmanship that had shaped my identity long before the betrayal. "What are you asking from me?" I finally asked, interrupting their conversation. They exchanged glances before Heather spoke. "Nothing. I didn't come to ask for help. I came to apologize, and to tell you that you were right about everything. I should have stood up for you." The sincerity in her voice pierced the armor I'd built around my heart. For the first time since the betrayal, I saw my sister rather than my rival hurt, humbled, and facing the consequences of choices she couldn't undo. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "But it doesn't solve your immediate problem." "No," Dad agreed. "But whatever happens with Harrison Metalworks, we needed to make things right with you. Or at least try." The family meeting continued into the evening as we reluctantly found ourselves aligned against Bradley's final destructive act. While reconciliation remained complicated, the immediate threat created a temporary truce focused on saving what remained of Harrison Metalwork. When they finally left, Sophia emerged from her office where she'd been tactfully working during our family drama. "So," she said, studying my expression, "are we getting involved in this mess?" "No," I replied firmly. "Phoenix Metalcraft is our priority." But I hesitated. "I can't stand by and watch him destroy everything my grandfather built. Not if there's something I can do." She nodded, understanding the distinction. "Just remember, you can help them without sacrificing what we've built here." As I locked up the shop that night, I reflected on the strange turn of events. I'd spent months fighting to establish independence from my family legacy, only to find myself drawn back into its orbit when threatened with its complete destruction. The irony wasn't lost on me, but neither was the opportunity to resolve this chapter on my own terms rather than theirs. 1 year after our emergency warehouse renovation, Phoenix Metalcraft hosted its official grand opening celebration. Our expanded facility, 3 times our original space, gleamed with fresh paint and new equipment arranged efficiently across the production floor. A gallery area showcased our most distinctive pieces, including scaled models of our public installations that had garnered industry recognition. The contrast between this moment and our humble beginnings wasn't lost on anyone, especially me. Standing at the entrance, preparing to cut the ceremonial ribbon, I reflected on the journey that had transformed betrayal into triumph. Harrison Metalworks had closed its doors 2 months earlier, unable to recover from Bradley's financial mismanagement and the reputation damage that followed revelations of his fraudulent activities. He'd fled town ahead of criminal charges, leaving behind angry creditors, incomplete client projects, and a devastated family business. The building that had housed 3 generations of Harrison metalworkers stood empty now, its contents auctioned to settle debts. I'd attended that auction, watching strangers pick through the remnants of my family's legacy with detached business interest. The only items I'd bid on were my grandfather's original tools and the faded sign that had hung above the entrance since 1965 sentimental artifacts rather than practical acquisitions. "Ready?" Sophia asked, handing me the oversized scissors for our ribbon-cutting photo op. Around us gathered our team, clients, and industry colleagues who had supported our growth. "Almost," I replied, scanning the crowd. My parents stood near the back, their presence still awkward but meaningful. Dad had begun working for Phoenix Metalcraft 3 months ago, not as a manager or owner, but as a skilled craftsman contributing his decades of experience to our projects. The arrangement maintained clear boundaries while allowing him to continue practicing the trade he loved. Heather stood beside them, her relationship with me slowly rebuilding through tentative coffee dates and occasional project consultations. After her divorce from Bradley, she'd returned to school for an accounting degree, finding her own path separate from both the family business and her ex-husband's influence. My grandfather Jeffrey stood front and center, 92 now, but still straight-backed, his eyes bright with pride as he watched the legacy he'd begun transform rather than end. Phoenix Metalcraft exists because of both destruction and creation, I began, addressing the gathered crowd. When the future I'd planned was taken away, I had two choices: surrender to loss or build something new from the ashes. Today celebrates not just our business success, but the resilience of craftsmanship and the power of beginning again. As the ribbon fell and applause erupted, I was struck by how completely my vision of success had transformed. A year ago, vindication against my family had driven me. Now, creating something meaningful on my own terms brought deeper satisfaction than any revenge could have offered. During the reception, industry contacts and potential clients circulated through our workshop, examining our processes and completed projects. The awards we'd won over the past year, including the prestigious Regional Design Excellence Medal, attracted particular attention, validating our approach to quality over quantity. "You've built something remarkable here," my father said when we finally had a moment alone. "More innovative than Harrison Metalworks ever was, even in its best days." "That was always the point," I replied. "Not to replicate what was taken from me, but to create something better." He nodded, understanding the subtle rebuke in my words. "Your grandfather says you've surpassed both of us." He's right. The acknowledgement meant more than I wanted to admit. Despite everything, his approval still mattered. As the celebration continued, Ryan gathered our core team for a toast. To Amber, who taught us all that the best revenge is massive success. "And to all of you," I countered, raising my glass to include everyone who had taken the risk of joining a startup born from conflict. Phoenix Metalcraft isn't just my vision, it's what we've all built together. This collaborative spirit represented the greatest difference between my approach and Bradley's. Where he had seen employees as disposable resources, I recognized that our team's collective expertise created value no individual could achieve alone. This philosophy had materialized in our profit-sharing program, announced to surprised employees during the celebration. 10% of annual profits will be distributed among the team, I explained as I handed out the first distribution checks. Because Phoenix Metalcraft's success belongs to everyone who helped build it. The announcement transformed the celebration's energy, shifting from professional networking to genuine community celebration. These people had believed in me when belief required real courage, and sharing our success acknowledged that investment. As the evening wound down, I found myself standing with my grandfather in the gallery area, examining the chronological display of our work that showed our evolution over just 12 months. "Your grandmother would have been proud," he said, resting his weathered hand on my shoulder. "Not just of what you've built, but how you built it." "I learned from the best," I replied, thinking of the values he'd instilled through both instruction and example. "Quality never goes out of style." He smiled at the phrase he'd repeated throughout my childhood. "You know, when your father gave the business to Bradley, I told him he was making a mistake. Skill and character matter more than fancy degrees." But this, he gestured around the thriving workshop, might be better than if things had gone according to plan. His perspective helped me see my journey with new clarity. The betrayal that had seemed catastrophic had actually liberated me from limitations. I hadn't recognized expectations about continuing traditions exactly as they'd always been done, responsibilities to family dynamics that prioritized harmony over fairness, compromises that would have constrained innovation. Phoenix Metalcraft wasn't just a replacement for what I'd lost. It was an evolution that might never have happened without that painful catalyst. As guests departed and our team began the casual cleanup that follows celebration, I took a moment alone in my office. On the wall hung the original Harrison Metalworks sign I'd purchased at auction, now displayed alongside our Phoenix Metalcraft logo, not as competing identities, but as chapters in a continuing story. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. Trust, once broken, rebuilds slowly, if at all. But the anger that had once consumed me had transformed into something more productive: determination, tempered by wisdom, ambition guided by values stronger than revenge. Whatever the future held, I had proven to my family, to the industry, and most importantly to myself, that my worth wasn't defined by what others gave or took from me. but by what I chose to create from the materials life provided. From the workshop came laughter and conversation as my team, my chosen family, shared stories and plans for projects ahead. This, more than any award or financial success, represented the true triumph of the past year's journey. Not just surviving betrayal, but creating something more meaningful because of it. Have you ever had to rebuild after someone broke your trust? I'd love to hear your stories of resilience and how you turned setbacks into comebacks. Drop a comment below sharing your experience. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful transformations happen when we're forced to rise from the ashes. Thank you all for your support on this journey, and I'll be back next week with another story that shows the incredible strength we all have within us.